This is the Sunday supplement. In one of my previous Saturday night uploads, I talked about some books I was reading and that would be very useful, including, I mentioned The Art of Learning by Joshua Waitzkin, who, according to his website, I assume that now he is very involved in martial arts. It's quite unusual in my model of the world that someone would go from being an absolutely fanatic, world-class chess player, chess master, starting at 6 years old, which is apparently he was walking through the park and he just saw somebody playing chess and immediately started playing chess. He said it was as if this had come from a previous life or some aspect of his life that just was ready to go. I mean, he didn't need to be taught chess or anything. He just looked at the chessboard, intuitively knew what was happening, and at 5 or 6 instantly started playing chess with the guys in Washington Square Park. Good chess players, adult chess players, and playing well, and growing from there. So that is an amazing story that shows his unfolding of his understanding through many planes and layers of understanding as he's taught by different people with different styles, different philosophies, different psychologies that all affect the way that chess was played, and how he had to learn these many layers of the game, these many stages of the game. And in there he also quotes an author that I think anyone who grew up in the 70s was very familiar with. It's not so well known now, Robert Pirsig, who wrote Zen and the Art of Motorcycle Maintenance. I don't have a copy of that. I haven't seen it in years, but for people who grew up in the 70s, the distinction that Pirsig was making between truth and quality, these were the big split distinction for him, was he broke the filtering of the world down into questions of quality, qualitative questions, and questions of factuality, truth questions. And Josh Waitzkin is enamored of Robert Pirsig and quotes Pirsig in his book. So The Art of Learning contains a reference to Pirsig's Zen and the Art of Motorcycle Maintenance. I was thinking about what lessons Joshua had for me and NLP, and for us and NLP. And I think the most important thing is when you think of the number of hours that he put in analyzing and studying the game. And we too have pieces, kind of like chess pieces. You can kind of think of NLP in some ways as a board game where certain pieces are brought into play in certain relationships with tactical and strategic outcomes or with goals, however you define it. But as George Lakoff makes very clear, the metaphor we use, what we might call the governing metaphor. So think in that terms of the governing metaphor. Whatever the governing metaphor might be at the time will very much affect the way that the kind of sub-metaphoric texture, okay, the texture of the process unfolds or opens up to us will depend on the governing metaphor. So the higher level governing metaphors then drill down into the specific questions. As we noticed in an earlier discussion I had about sleight of mouth and the value of the sleight of mouth patterns, and these are explicitly 14, and then Steve Andreas has come along with his really 2-book program with his scope and category upgrading of that. I think it's valuable, worthwhile, and probably necessary to think about Josh Waitzkin's strategy toward chess and how he utilized this in mastering and developing his concept of the chess game. And he calls this translation of level, translating this over to some degree into how we are thinking about or metaphorizing what we're doing in NLP. And I'll just pull a few of these out because I'm always working within this 10-minute frame. You think I've got a temporal frame, a 10-minute frame. That's what YouTube allows me to do. And if you make a lot of YouTubes or YouTube-like programs such as this, one of the things you'll start to notice is it really begins to discipline your discussion and your conversation to work within frames, time frames. Like you're allotted 10 minutes, okay, you've got to get it done within 10 minutes. So how does that affect your thought? How does that affect the way you kind of budget the frame versus people that, garrulously can go on for hours and they're not constrained in any way. So the constraint Think about that, the concept of the constraint. The kind of constraint that is imposed very much shapes the way the content unfolds. So there is a strong relationship between constraint and content, okay? And when we think about beliefs, we talk about beliefs. In the next one, I'll probably go into beliefs in greater detail. One of the ways to think about beliefs is beliefs as constraints, or beliefs as constraining systems. So there's been a lot of different discussion about beliefs, but one of the areas that has never really been languaged and brought into language, which I think you need to think about and really kind of get here, is the idea of beliefs as constraints, beliefs as self-imposed constraints, beliefs as outside imposed constraints. And NLP, unfortunately, I think, talks about constraints as negatives. But there's another way of looking at constraints, and constraints can be powerful positives, because constraints can so shape the context of how your process and your content unfolds that it really becomes the master governing, sort of the governing structure is dictated by the constraints. So we'll pick that up.